Whew. It's a nice day outside though, so there's that. We're gonna wait about another minute or so to let in a few more people. We've got more joining. If there's anyone that, if you need Spanish translation, we have that available, and we'll give instructions on that in just a moment. Probably shouldn't whistle, huh? We should probably switch over to the Spanish. If you want to switch over to the Spanish channel, it looks like there's some really good singing going on over there. So, um, goodness, don't stop singing. Yeah, that's really cool. Interpretation and music. Ah. So in our messaging, I think one of the things that we'll probably be more intentional about doing in the future is letting people know that you do have to register prior to it. Looks like we're getting some registrations happening. Um, so that's fun. I know that can be a little bit nerve-wracking if you're trying to register when the meeting is going on. All right. Well, it is 2:32, so I don't want to. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time and um, of your Sunday, right? It's a it's a Sunday. So welcome everybody. Um, my name is Carl King, and this is one of many Aurora Affordable Housing Summit kind of forums that we're going to be having over the next year. As you probably know by now, there's a lot going on the national stage when it comes to housing, when it comes to infrastructure. You may have seen the HIB that just passed, the bill that passed for infrastructure. But also there's been a lot of movement at the state level where it comes to housing, when it comes to affordability, when it comes to transportation, a few other things. And so in order to kind of create a better atmosphere for both this conversation, as well as to dispel myths, as well as to kind of engage people, bring in the community to talk about this kind of thing. Um, we kind of came up with this idea in conversation with other organizations, and some of those couldn't be here today, unfortunately. But Ralph Jordan at the Aurora Housing Authority was one of the people that we had a pretty in-depth conversation with. Some of the work that they're doing, they've done a lot of work to rehab a number of their current properties, and they're going to be doing a whole renovation of all of their portfolio over the next. They've been doing it for a few years, but over the next year or so, they hope to have all of those renovated, as well as they have some projects in the works. But in speaking with the Aurora Housing Authority, speaking with people that do job training, job placement, and those kind of things, there is this great understanding of a need to talk about affordable housing and to kind of expand the conversation. And so, without further ado, my name is again Carl King, and the organization that is sponsoring this is Kane County United, and we welcome you here. Kane County, we're a nonpartisan organization And we have affiliations with a number of nonprofits, um, and as well as churches, unions, individuals that are committed to social transformation through a lot of solutions, but simply to say that we are a little d democratic, and we're based in racial equity and inclusion. So if this is your first time coming to one of these type meetings, welcome. Hope that you find the information informative as well as helpful. So this is kind of a launch party of sorts for the work that we've been doing. We've been doing a number of conversations over the last year with stakeholders in the community, connecting with leaders, community members. We've listened intently to activists, to organizers, to business leaders, politicians, community members, pastors, saints, ain'ts. I'm going to slow down just a little bit. As well as rabbis, leaders of mosques, charter school staff, public school administrators, funders, grant recipients. So suffice it to say, we've gone pretty deep in the community to understand a number of the stakeholders, like who's interested in this, what does it impact, who does it impact, and why does it matter? And so through this work, through the work that we've been doing, and the number of conversations that we've had, one of the things that has, I guess, come to the top for us is this need in Aurora for affordable housing. So this is who we are, this is what we're doing, and this is what this particular series of conversations is going to be. We're hosting a series of talks and meetings and actions. The goal is, one, educating Aurora community members about affordable housing; two, unpacking resistance to affordable housing among Aurora leaders. So I guess for number one, what is affordable housing, right? A lot of people have that question. How does it impact the property values in a neighborhood? And the short answer is it doesn't really impact the property values in the neighborhood. They remain about the same. But another question is, who benefits, right? And short answer to that, we all do. But we'll dig more into a lot of those questions. But also, number two, resistance to affordable housing among Aurora leaders. Some of the leaders with whom I've spoken feel that Aurora has done enough, and there's a need for surrounding communities to do more. Some leaders feel there's been too heavy an emphasis on immigrant communities instead of people who currently work and struggle to live in Aurora. So this is just some of the feedback that we've gotten so far. But part of this work is to hear a little bit more, to have open discussions about this, and hopefully build a better consensus on what is possible. Number three, part of this goal, the goal of doing this, is to motivate more Aurora residents to civic engagement. I don't know if you know it, but we'll get into it a little bit as we go, but there's a lot of legislation being passed at the state and federal level to fund affordable housing. And then there's an opportunity for people with development firms to come in and promote housing solutions that may not necessarily be equitable or optimal, and that cuts corners. And so just going over that and looking at that as a reality, involved residents can advocate for what they want, right? What we want as members of the community, as people that are involved in the community. We can say, no, we don't want this. We do want this, if we get involved, right? And part of the way that we get involved is kind of knowing what is going on. And then number four, this series of talks, meetings, and actions, the goal is to actually build healthy, safe, and affordable housing for Aurora residents. So with all of that said, the purpose of the meeting, who's doing it, and just kind of that off the top of the bat. If you'll put your organization, your name, If you want to be contacted, if you want to be connected into these series of meetings and actions, I encourage you to put your name, your information in the chat. If you're representing an organization, feel free to include that as well. If it's just you and your family or just you by yourself, that's cool too. We welcome you here. But yeah, just take a moment. We'll take about a few moments and allow you to introduce yourself. Good to have you here. And also, while you're doing that, while you're entering that information, again, if you need translation services, you can go to the language button on the side there. If it depends on what you're using, but if you're using like an iPhone or iPad, you can click on and it'll say language interpretation. Or if you go to the bottom, and you can have translation in Spanish if you need Spanish translation assistance. Hey, good to have you all. Joe Jackson, Jose Alfonso Villalobos, Jen Hoffman, World Relief, Hugo, you're gonna have to help me with that. Sal, I don't want to butcher it, man. I apologize.
Saltagero.
Saltagero. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well. And there is, you can read that there from Sandra Davila. Thank you for being here, Sandra. Thank you for translating for us. All right, let's get started here. You can see kind of what we're doing, why we're doing it. Let's continue on with this process. So one of the questions we got, and one of the questions we consistently get is, what is affordable housing, right? What is affordable housing? Anybody want to take a stab at it? Obviously, you can see that whole long description or designation up there, but you can enter something in the chat or you can come off mute. What are your thoughts on housing affordability? What is it? What does it mean? If you're an expert in the field, definitely speak up. We want to hear you. Otherwise, I'm just going to do the boring thing and read this long explanation.
The quick sum of it is just housing that's affordable. So that doesn't go over the 30% of income for 30% of somebody's income.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So 30% of an income. I was surprised to learn that this number has changed over the years, right? It used to be 20% of your total income was the amount that was federally kind of identified or as set aside for housing, 20%. And over time, it's grown from 20 to 25. And then now the federally kind of recognized number is 30%. And keeping housing costs below 30% of your income. Also, if you're going to buy a house, right, they're going to look at you and they're going to say your 30% of your income is about where they're going to put you for how much they believe you can afford for a house. And obviously that number is kind of fraught, right? Because 30% of your income, that's a chunk of your income. And then you add in childcare costs, you add in groceries, you add in, I don't know, I guess CNN did a whole deal about milk, the price of milk and gas recently. But there's so many other factors, right, that go into whether we can afford to live somewhere and what housing affordability is for us. And so the government defines affordable housing. Household is considered low income if it makes less than 80% of the median income in the local area. And so by definition, a dwelling is considered affordable if low-income families, and it costs 24% of the area median income. Does anybody know that number for Aurora, the area median income? I'm guessing it's around 60,000. Anybody have that specific number offhand? So 24% of your income would be considered an affordable house, right?
31,000 for individuals.
31,000 for individuals and about 60 for households. And so this page here kind of helps to break down the price of affordable housing, right? The price of living somewhere, the price that it costs to make it, right, to exist. Basically, if you're making minimum wage, the minimum wage is about $11, and it takes 80 hours per work week, which is just about impossible, right? At minimum wage to afford a 2-bedroom rental home at the fair market value. In Illinois, the fair market rent is about $1,100 for a 2-bedroom apartment. But this doesn't include rent and utilities at 30% of your housing income. A household must earn $3,800 monthly or $45,000 annually. And so basically the wage, the state housing wage, is $22.11 per hour that you would need to make to be able to survive at a 2-bedroom house. Now, I do want to say that this is better news than last year, because last year the number was 23, I think 23.98 was around the number that per hour state housing wage. So I know that's not great, but it's there's movement in a positive direction, but it's still not tremendous, right? Because look at the Chicago, Naperville, Joliet housing wage, $24.98, right? So that state number is one thing, but this area is a completely different thing, right? So you have to have 2 full-time jobs at minimum wage to afford a 2-bedroom rental home. I'd like to know, how many of us have had 2 full-time jobs before? Anybody? Anybody ever had like a full-time job and 2 part-time jobs? It's yeah, briefly, there we go, right? So even people among us right now know what it's like to exist, trying to make that happen. The number of full-time jobs at minimum wage to afford a 1-bedroom home is 1.7 full-time jobs. And this isn't to, create some dire picture. This is just the picture as it is, right? I think sometimes when we talk about affordability in an area, proponents of proponents of the status quo will say this is the extreme example, but this right here is not the extreme example. This is just the example, right? This is just the median. I was talking with NAMI KDK Sarah Gray a few weeks ago, and she mentioned going, her work used to be with Two Rivers agency, and there were a few people that signed up for from Two Rivers, but her work used to be with them going and visiting homes to basically do kind of a home survey to check about placement and seeing whether the children qualified. And she mentioned how as she was going to some of these homes in Aurora, right, there would be the front bedroom would be a place where a small family would stay, right, and then there was a back bedroom where another small family would stay, and then above the garage, and then in the basement, right? So there were multiple families in one house, a single family home, and there would be mold, there would be standing water, all kinds of different things, and sure, you can get a home probably for $500-600 a month for that one room, right, where you have shared kitchen and shared bathroom and all that stuff. But that's not affordability, nor is that desirable, nor is that like existing, right? That's just barely surviving. And so we're talking about actually like living and having a home that will allow you to live very well. And so the number is 2211 state housing wage. So the Illinois housing profile that fits into this affordable housing conversation is that there's 27% of renter households that are extremely low income in Illinois. The maximum income for a four-person extremely low income housing is $26 and 120, 26,120. So there's a shortage of rental homes that are affordable and available to extremely low income houses. Those of you at Hesed House, you know, right? You know what this is. These are not new numbers to you, and some of the others that are here, you've seen this yourself, right? This is the work that you do. You're very familiar with these numbers and probably able to rattle them off. But for some, when we talk about affordability, I think there's a myth of what exists out there, right? What's available and what it requires in order to get into something. Something that we're not going to delve into too deeply, but is the restraints. I talked with King County board member who was previously on the police force, and she told me about her brother who was trying to get a housing, right? And so if you have a record of some sort, right, that further restricts the amount of landlords that will rent to you. It restricts your ability to get federally subsidized housing. And so all of these things are part of that picture, right, for affordability and for access. And then we could add a whole bunch of other things in there, but I just want to open it up for questions and comment. Any thoughts about this so far?
I think one of the things that's also interesting with finding affordable housing is when families could, in theory, maybe afford the monthly rent, but the requirements to even get in of being 3 times the rent, like 3 times the rent as your income, like that is really hard to do. You could have a family that could afford, let's say, $1,200 a month, but maybe they don't make 3 times that. And you don't even get a chance to get your foot in the door for that. I think the other thing that's really hard in this too is for single income households and how vulnerable that can make people of not having more than 3 times the rent and having to have a roommate. And sometimes that's a safe situation. Sometimes you end up with people who aren't safe because that's the only way you can afford your housing, which, affordable housing is great, but more importantly, you need safe and affordable housing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen, for elaborating on that. Right. So, and that's why we say, right, so safe, affordable housing. These are not like, and I was talking to, who was it a few days ago? We were talking about a remodel, and this guy that was recommended to me, he's a contractor, and the guy said he's pretty slow, but he's lower cost than most, and he does a really good job. And it's that same thing, right? You pick two out of the three: safe, cheap, and fast, or good quality, cheap, and fast. And unfortunately, that's the bargain when we're talking affordable housing, as opposed to, we believe that we should be able to create a situation where people can have it all, where we can create a situation where people can have it all. Let's go to the next slide here. Breakout questions. So based on what we've talked about so far, what do you hear and where do you hear the conversation on affordable housing falling apart? in your experience? I'm sure you've had these conversations before, maybe just you and your friends, people in your community, family members. Where do you hear the conversation on affordable housing falling apart? Do you hear, I'm sure there's some people that talk about deservedness, right? And second question, what are you and your organization doing to promote affordable housing in Aurora? So we're not going to break out because we have enough people. I think we can safely have this conversation with just the group that we have here. But where do you hear the conversation on affordable housing falling apart?
Well, for us, Jen and I are at World Relief of Chicagoland. That conversation falls apart again with our clients in they don't meet any of the criteria. I don't know how many times in the last week when I've been speaking with a property manager or an owner or an investor or a real estate agent, when they've said to me, I can't even count how many times this week, well, what happens when you stop paying for them? We pay for 3 months of all expenses at World Relief. What happens when they stop paying at 3 months? What do I do then? I'm so far in debt, I can't bring anybody on that's a risk. I can't. And so that's for us, that's where it's falling apart, is that landlords and property owners are so averse to any risk factors whatsoever. And then what we've found in the last 2 weeks is that lots and lots of the landlords are asking for double security deposit. So even if you can afford $1,200 a month, and maybe you can scrape together a second $1,200, you can't scrape together $2,400 plus your 12. There's no way. People don't, the average American home can't come up with a $400 for an emergency. I mean, that's a statistic we throw around all the time. They just don't even have $400. So how do we expect these folks to come up with $3,600 to rent a $1,200 apartment? It's falling apart before you even get to have the conversation right now. That's what we're finding.
So double security
Yes.
deposit.
Yes. That's very, very common right now. Either 1.5 to 2 times the rent for a security deposit. We've done that maybe 4 times in the last week. Had to pay a double security deposit for our clients. And that's just a teeny tiny amount of the people that are looking for rentals, is those that have that World Relief backing. I can't imagine someone who's out there all on their own and has absolutely no one to help them. So when you think this through, when you go from, okay, we've got thousands of people that are getting ready to be evicted because we can now take action on the evictions that we couldn't take action on before. So they're going to be evicted. Now they have an eviction on their housing history. And they've got no money, or their unemployment has now run out. I mean, are we going to have to become like some of these bigger cities and rent porta potties to help set up tent cities because people are going to be staying in tents for the winter? They'll die. They can't live in a tent in Chicago area. I don't know. We're concerned for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Those are some really good points that you bring up, and I know they're not just points, right? These are lived realities and a situation, and that I think is the reason having this conversation sooner rather than later is so vital, right? I talked with Chris Regana. He said he was going to be able to be on with the city of Aurora. He administers the CDBG grants as well as the quality of life grants, and yeah, I haven't seen them, but I think this is something, right? These are the conversations that we are needing to bring in front of city council, alder people, right? People that are decision makers in the area, so that we can truly have a conversation about affordable housing and create solutions prior to a true like a breakdown.
Yeah, and the funny
Anybody
part
else?
is that the cold weather's coming.
It
You
is.
know, I mean, it's 30 this week, but it sure isn't 15 below, but it will
Yeah.
be. And what
Yeah.
are these folks going to do that have, again, I go back to that statistic, the majority of all Americans can't come up with $400 for an unplanned for emergency. What are they supposed to do to come up with a double security deposit plus rent, plus what some folks are doing now is a high risk, non-refundable deposit
Yes.
on top of all of those other things, plus your $50 per adult in the application process.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to come to a crisis. I would say it has to in the
I
next
think we're there. I think we're there already.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Where do you hear the conversation on affordable housing falling apart? I mentioned earlier some of the barriers or obstacles that I've heard in conversation is you know, I heard one group, and I'm some of this stuff I'm intentionally not using names and organizations to protect the innocent, I guess. But one organization said, you know, we're helping so many other people, right? We're helping them and not our local residents. And whether we want to argue about, you know, whatever that is, it's just it's a barrier to affordable housing, right? It's a barrier to us creating solutions that work for everybody in this community. But I think anybody else, what other places or where do you hear the conversation on affordable housing falling apart?
I think a big part of it's just lack of education of what really affordable housing is and what it means to the area in which you live if affordable housing is going in there. You know, everybody, there's a lot of people out there that hear affordable housing, they think Cabrini Green, they think the high rises, all those different setups, and increased crime rates and plummeting property values and you know, school ratings then, you know, dropping as well. Another organization forwarded me an email that a person had sent to the Geneva City Council as they were mulling some affordable housing there, and you know, it was a I should, in terms of grammar and things like that, it was a very well put together email and argument. But the amount of misinformation in there and the amount of just I would say borderline ignorance and prejudice in the email was just astounding. You know, I don't want low income kids going to school with my kids because it's going to take away the teachers, or they're going to have to focus on the low income kids who are further behind and all these different things. And that's for as wrong as that is, and but both morally and informationally wrong as those ideas are, that's a perception that's out there, unfortunately. And it's affordable housing is one of those hot button issues where, especially right now with how politicized everything is, if you say those words, people are ready to pounce. So yeah, that's been frustrating, to say the least.
Thank you for that. So school ratings, crime, and property values, right? So it's going to, and we kind of kept our nose, I guess, or ear to the ground with the whole Emma's Landing that's going in Geneva. There was quite a fight to get that passed. Fortunately, the mayor and the city council did vote to approve it. And this is a few years after the failure to get the other great opportunity in Geneva passed. But yeah, so the conversation falls apart with prejudice with ideas about, you know, low income people, lack of education about what it is, the expectancy or the expectation of landlords, right? And property managers and owners and developers and investors. I think you mentioned some of those things. And fortunately for us, there's a number of organizations in Aurora that are doing some of this work right on the ground, promoting affordable housing, building affordable housing, talking to people about affordable housing, and trying to get legislation passed to make it more viable and a reality. Anybody want to share some of the things that you've seen that are being done in Aurora to get affordable housing? Maybe you can share some of what your organization is doing. I think, Robin, you mentioned putting up double security deposits because that's what's being asked for, right? What are some other things?
I think something else we've seen, not directly through our organization, but through some partner organizations, is also shifting the focus on getting our clients, especially newly arrived to the US clients, into rental housing, but also moving people towards home ownership, because knowing long-term, for some families, that's going to be the best option. And if they can find something now and find something affordable, taking advantage of that to buy a home and not have to be stuck in this cycle. With a lot of our immigrant families, we do see a lot of bigger family sizes. So also encouraging people to start thinking about home ownership early on, because, you know, we've been talking about 2-bedroom units. Those are pretty hard to find. But when you start talking 3, 4, 5-bedroom rentals for a family of 6 or 7, and maybe, you know, mom and dad are working, but because it's a large unit, you're talking $2,400-$2,500 a month. So I think we've been really just trying to find partner organizations. We also have a match savings program through the state of Illinois, where clients are able to go through homeownership courses and programs with other partner nonprofits, and then the state is able to match some of that money to help them in that path towards a down payment. But again, it's a solution for a small number of families that are able to find an affordable rental and are able to find a well-paying job, because that's the other part of this conversation is housing keeps going up, but wages don't. So yeah, but trying to get people on that path, because we know long-term renting is just so volatile that it's not going to be a good solution for a lot of families for a long time.
Thanks for that, Jen. Yeah, right. So to complicate the narrative, you mentioned wages, and there's this bridge, and then there's a chasm. The chasm is if you make over a certain amount, you no longer qualify for government assistance with food and with housing, but from there to actually being on your feet is almost like a vast Grand Canyon on some level, right? Being able to jump over or fly over to that next phase. Something that we're hearing a lot more about now is housing, right? And transportation. And so to complicate this, I guess, even further is there's a website and an organization that breaks down the true affordability of a home when factoring in transportation costs, right? So in Aurora, the average household has 1.78 cars. I don't know how you would break that up.
Look, that's a car and a scooter.
There you go. A car and a skateboard that's motored. Yeah, so 1.78 vehicles, and the transportation costs are around $13,000. So you factor that then into the housing costs, and you have over 50% of the budget is going to housing and transportation, which leaves, very little for remaining income. Those are kind of the highlights. Those are the terrible things that are going on. I think we've kind of dug deep into that, and we could talk about that, I'm sure, ad nauseum. But I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in Aurora right now, and some ways that we can get involved. So, the Illinois, I mentioned earlier at the top of this, created a comprehensive plan, a housing plan for Illinois. And this is something that is ongoing every year, for the last many years. But what I really appreciate is that last sentence: the Housing Task Force believes that housing is a human right, an essential community asset, and economic engine for all Illinoisans. And part of the housing plan, the comprehensive housing plan for the state, is continued outreach, presentations, and discussions with non-exempt and at-risk of non-exemption communities through Illinois. This is one of the goals that they have, and something that we're currently doing, right? And we'll share this slide with everyone that's here, if you want to, see these and be able to share them out with other people. Obviously, where you can find housing. This is for people if there was someone that showed up that did not know how to find affordable housing in the area. There currently, as of today, I think this morning, there are 21 properties in Aurora that are available, that are affordable. Many of those are seniors only, unfortunately. So that really reduces the opportunity for you to find affordable housing. But let's talk about what Aurora is doing right now. So Aurora City Council approves putting affordable housing apartments into vacant school buildings. I'm sure many of you have already heard about this, which is, I guess it can be an exciting thing, right? Apartments will be put in the old Lincoln Elementary School building on South Lake Street in Aurora. This plan was approved by the Aurora City Council. The Alder people voted unanimously with one abstention. And what I would, I guess, like to say about this is, I mentioned at the top, and this I want to dig just a little bit deeper into, is when these plans come on the market or go into the community resource or community development page, it's very imperative that community members are on board, right? That know what's going on and are involved in the process of what does this mean, right? What does this mean for us as residents? What does this mean for people that are going to be living here? Because this particular project, though it sounds really great on the surface, and it is affordable, and that is exciting, we're happy because it creates affordability for 47 people at minimum, 47 apartment units. The concern with this particular unit is some of the modifications and exceptions or exemptions that were given to this particular project. And you'd have to dig just a little bit into it, but Exhibit B on their plan for the Fox Valley Apartments is what they're going to be called at Todd School and Lincoln School, is look at number 4 here. It says building code amendment, in-unit laundry. So allow common space laundry in lieu of in-unit laundry as amended for R2 dwelling units. So rather than building out the space with in-unit laundry, there's going to be now the requirement for, if you're a resident, to use a common area laundry that most likely will be coin operated, and most likely, I don't know if you've ever used a coin operated laundry. Those things get expensive really quick. Can I get a witness? Um, and so, like, when we're talking about affordable housing, we don't just want any old kind of affordable housing. We want affordable housing that's safe. We want affordable housing that is optimal, right? The best that we can get for the money that we're investing. And, to that point, homeowners get a home mortgage interest deduction, right? Which is basically, in essence, a federally subsidized grant if you are a homeowner, right? And so that's built into when you file your taxes, you request that HMID exemption or refund or what have you. And so we do this thing for people that have, and then people that have not, we take even further, and poverty comes with interest, right? We charge interest for those that are poor. And this is an example of that. There's going to be a single gas meter for the entire building in lieu of independent meter per R2 dwelling unit. You see that number 2. And then number 3, single main for domestic water in lieu of meters individually serving and privately metering each R2 dwelling unit. There's a number of things here where we can see the developers are cutting costs, right? They're cutting not only the costs to themselves, but they're cutting the benefits of living in a space to those that are supposed to be the beneficiaries of this thing. Further on, you'll see they aren't building out like a deck on the outside of each dwelling unit. It's just going to be you in that unit inside of the school. And so this is less than optimal. It's not substandard necessarily. I wouldn't say that, but I would say it's suboptimal. And so when renters are given this type of housing as the only option, of course, they'll take it out of desperation. But as we're having these conversations, I think it's imperative that we tell city council that they can do better, right? We tell our older people, you can do better. And we don't want modifications and exceptions to buildings. We want buildings that are made the best for our community members. Because what typically happens is, in a development like this, because it's less than optimal, people end up not wanting to live there, right? And then as a result, the value of the property goes down. And then it becomes this spiral of problems, versus creating something that's desirable, creating something that's optimal that people want to live at. It raises the profile, it raises the standard, and it creates better solutions for everybody. So there's also at the city of Aurora, on the community development page, you'll find this. There's a public hearing notice for an amendment of the 2018, 2020, and 2021 annual action plans. And I encourage you to dig into this a little bit. There's a kind of a few revisions. Means more expensive, yes. Later on, the repairs are further. But there was a public hearing November the 3rd, but there's still a public comment period regarding the way that funding is done, specifically regarding affordable housing in Aurora. And so you can go to aurorail.org and go to their community development page, and you'll see that public hearing notice. I encourage you to go there, look at that, and dig down into it, because there's a number of revisions that are being done that affect the community, right? And that I think community members should be aware of and involved in. So that period is open. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up here and tell you just that we believe our organizations can go further together than we can alone. And if you feel the same way, we welcome you to join us on the road to nonpartisan, broad-based organizing to transform, educate, and engage community members. So with that, here you go. These are some to-dos, right? So what's next? Go study. You can go to the Aurora Community Development page, read up on this amendment, read up on the affordable housing plans that are being presented. You can get involved with us, get involved with your organization. If you know of an organization that's doing some work in the community, get involved, right? Tell some people about it. And as we send you out these slides, and we're going to send you these individual pictures as well of some of the slides that we shared today, pick one and send it to 2 friends or 2 coworkers and share it with them, right? Because as we're talking about, I think Joe mentioned the lack of education about what is and what affordable housing will do. It behooves us that are interested in creating affordable solutions. It is on us, right, to do the work of educating, of explaining, of changing the tide, right, of turning the tide from affordable housing being something that's a stigma to it being something that is desirable and that people have a common language for, right? If we have a common language that this is how much it costs, right? It costs $22.11 at the state level, and that it costs $24.98. If you've got to make $24.98 an hour to be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment dwelling in this area. If we all have that same understanding and we can speak that same language, then it begins to turn the tide, it begins to change, and it begins to educate people, right? Because that's the work that we have to do, is educating people. This is how much it costs to live here. This is what housing affordability means. This is who it impacts. This is how it changes our communities. It doesn't change it in a bad way. Your kids aren't going to school with some boogeyman, right? Your kid, the teachers actually, yeah, this is all a part of that education process. And rather than reciting all of the bad and negative, let's start talking about the good and the positive and what this can do for us. Because the truth of the matter is, if we don't have affordable housing, it's costing us more in infrastructure. It's costing us more to build barriers than it is to just create housing for people and create a good living situation. Now, I'm going to shut up and allow you to speak back if you have any thoughts or reflections as we're wrapping this up.
You know, Carl, I was thinking that something my daddy's taught me my whole life is that people will live up to or down to your expectations of them. And if we expect to put those that are experiencing hardships right now, if we expect them to be grateful and happy and thankful for, you know, subpar housing that has roaches or bed bugs, or it's just not inhabitable. If we expect them to be happy and grateful about that, then we're creating something we don't want to deal with later down the road. We just have to get outside of our own comfort zone and say, hey, I mean, I don't know how you feel about that. It takes a village to raise a child, but it does. It takes all of us doing our part and all of us making sacrifices to help those folks learn that we expect the best out of them, because in the end, they are our best, unless we treat them otherwise. Yeah.
And I'll say this to add on to what you said, Robin, is I've discovered in my life that those folks are me. we came out here to Illinois in 2010. And we came from Fort Worth, Texas. We had a home, we had a vehicle, we had two vehicles. We had a nice, nice furniture and everything. When we got here, we quickly ran into hard times, and we had our vehicles repoed. The one that we didn't sell, we lost our house to foreclosure, and we were homeless. And so when you talk about, I don't know, when we talk about those people, when we talk about them, they are us, right? And if the average household, it takes, doesn't even have $400 to survive, the solutions that we create are going to be the safety net that we live with when hard times befall us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're all just one phone call away from being where they are. We just are. Yeah. God
Anybody
loves us all the same. We're
Yeah.
all the same. Yeah.
Sandra, I know you're in the Spanish channel. You have anything you want to add? Let me see if I can bring you over. Hold on one second. Are you there? Oh no. Yeah, I can't bring you over for some reason. Hold on a second. Okay. Oh, you're typing it in the chat.
True.
Yeah, a teacher. And that's one of those other slides. Unfortunately, we didn't get into it, but yeah, our educators, the people that we rely on to do the work of molding and crafting our society. Those are the people that we've made our living really difficult for. Thanks for sharing, Sandra. Anybody else? We're wrapping it up. And we encourage you to pick one of these things or pick all of these things, get involved, go study, and share some of this information with those around you. We've got one more slide. Thank you for joining us. And we sincerely appreciate your commitment and your interest in building out affordable, safe, wholesome solutions for all of our neighbors and community. Last opportunity for feedback, and then we're going to switch gears. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? All right, so before we end, I want to give everybody an opportunity to, if you just come off of mute real quick and tell us how this particular presentation went, and this particular forum, tell us how it went and what you would add, what you would change, what you would do differently if you'd never do this again. But yeah, I want to hear so that as we're rolling this out, as we're doing this again, obviously we're going to have speakers in the future, and we'll announce that. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this particular forum, and what would you change?
I think it's very necessary in a cause that it's going to take a lot of us to get behind to move the needle on. The biggest thing that I would change is, and you mentioned it a little bit, Carl, Ralph Jordan, Ragona, from the city, even trying to get some older people on these calls. I think that would be helpful, because they can then see and hear the community members and the community organizations coming together and saying, hey, this is a problem and we need to find solutions to it. And having them at the table and hearing that firsthand, I think would be impactful.
Thank you, Joe. I'm pretty miffed, not miffed. I don't know if that's the word. I'm disappointed because I spoke with Chris on Monday, and he said he was going to make an effort to be here. And Ralph Jordan was one of the people that we had this initial conversation with about a month and a half out. And this was something that he said that he was behind and was going to push. So to your point, I will definitely be on the phone with him this week. And as we as we do this again, yeah, we'll hold their feet to the fire. Not in a bad way either.
I think it's Sunday is a tough time, I think, for people. I know at World Relief right now, we're working sometimes 7 days a week. And so if you do get one day where you don't have to work, you're hoping it's Sunday. And maybe that would, but if you get to during the week, I mean, nobody has any time right now. Everybody's working overtime and busy and schedules, but maybe just even a weekday offering, maybe one during the day and one during the evening, just do a repeat of the session. So if you miss it, or reminders right before, when you send, if anybody who has pre-registered, if you sent out a reminder before, same day, that might help people to keep it on their radar.
Thanks for that, Robin. Yeah, our next will be during the week. We're gonna hit a few just to see if we can keep the conversation going. All right, y'all, I appreciate your time. I won't keep you any longer. Again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for engaging in the conversation. We did record this, so we'll make this available. We'll trim it so that it won't be an hour and 30 minutes or whatever. But then we'll allow that to be shared with your networks, and we'll send you the information from this meeting, the slides and all of that stuff that you can then engage other people with. So we'll keep the conversation going. Thank you again so much, and hope to see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Ya, no, aquí ya.
You there, Sandra? I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me? I can hear. Okay.
Oh gosh. Let's see. There, are you there? Yes. How do you feel it went?